Well, what a weekend it's been then, eh? Celtic dropped points yesterday. It opens the door ever so slightly for Rangers to catch up on both us and Aberdeen at the top of the table. And then Kilmarnock go and do us all a wee bit of a favour. What a weekend. Let's talk about that. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. We're trying to get to that big 50k by the end of the year. We've got a huge week coming up with another Champions League game. So if you want to stay up to date with everything, make sure to hit both those buttons. And if you want, you can become a channel member as well. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the reaction from yesterday's game, which has also led into the result today, I suppose. We can talk about the reaction to that. I feel like there was a bit of an overreaction. I would personally say somewhat of an absurd reaction. So I want to cover that. Let's remind ourselves how the league table is looking after this weekend's fixtures in the Scottish Premiership. After the conclusion of the game today between Rangers and Kilmarnock, that's how the league table's looking. Rangers now 6 points behind Celtic and Aberdeen. Pardon me for holding back my laughter. They went into the weekend 5 behind. And after a huge chance to close the gap, after Aberdeen gave Rangers such an opportunity, taking points at Parkhead yesterday, and after a lot of Rangers fans decided to flood my comments section telling me that this was the beginning of the Rangers revolution, they go and lose to Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. Hilarious. And this kind of ties into a lot of what I want to talk about today. There is no genuine threat from Rangers right now, and there won't be until something huge happens at that football club, whether it be the sacking of Clement, whether it be the introduction of a new board, whether it be the signing of a whole new starting 11. Rangers aren't a credible threat to Celtic right now. It's as simple as that. I had someone come on my channel yesterday and say the first thing that I spoke about was a dig against Rangers and how Aberdeen are closer to Celtic, and how it was a mark of my bitterness. Listen, you might think I'm a bitter man, and maybe behind the camera I am a bitter man, but on this channel, I have made it my aim for the last 8 years to talk honestly whenever I've had to give Rangers credit whenever I've had to, and to call out either side whenever I've had to. Right now, I feel like I am genuinely witnessing the worst Rangers team I have ever seen. I truly believe it's worse than Warburton's, Caixinha's, Murty's, Beale's, and Gerrard's at its worst. This Rangers team do not possess a genuine threat, and the example of that was today. Another opportunity which they've had a number of times over this past year or two to really put some pressure on Celtic, and their arses have collapsed. And that's why I think that yesterday some of the reaction from our support was blown way out of proportion, because I knew that Rangers were going to go and drop points today. I just knew it was going to happen. So we as a Celtic support now need to look at our reaction from yesterday and really think if we went a little bit too far. And that doesn't go for everyone. It absolutely doesn't. I think that, actually I would say the majority of people were probably in the same sort of thinking as myself. Didn't get too carried away with dropping points yesterday. They didn't get too down and out about it. They didn't look at it as a catastrophic result for Celtic. But there was a fair amount who did. And now it just feels sort of pointless after the weekend. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not as if we can just sit here and laugh and just forget that we drop points and sort of pretend that dropping points is okay. Of course it's not, and you're allowed to be angry at bad results. I'm not saying we're not allowed to be. And we can't just obviously rely on Rangers being bad to get away with dropping points. That's not how football works, and it shouldn't be how we work as Celtic supporters. So don't get anything that I'm saying here confused. Don't get mixed up on whatever I'm about to say, because it's not that. I'm not trying to say that because Rangers are bad, we'll get away with it and that's the bare minimum. No, I want us to win every single game. But I can also acknowledge that a very good Aberdeen side came to Celtic Park yesterday, took their chances and got a point. Because any other day, or any other game, Celtic scored 5 yesterday. We could have scored 5. We should have scored 5 probably. But we just didn't. Things didn't go away. Aberdeen had, 2 shots and scored both of them. Yet people are acting like Celtic are the worst team in the country, that we're just as bad as Rangers. So that's what I'm really here to talk about today, because, yeah, yesterday we weren't that bad. We have played far worse than that and won games. We have played far worse than that and lost games. We dropped a couple of points to a side who are well within their rights to challenge Celtic at the minute with how good they've been. There is a reason they have the same amount of points 8 games into the season as Celtic. But that's the thing. We are this far into the season, 8 games, and Celtic have dropped 2 points. And you'd think that we are battling relegation. Which is why I've come to the comments section of my video yesterday to talk about some of the absurd reaction from yesterday's game. Because I feel like there has been a fair amount of it. And I want to go over some of it and give my kind of rebuttal to it. As I said, I'm not here to spark controversy or arguments amongst the Celtic supporters. I'm just here to give my responses to some of the comments that I feel are totally out of proportion. So let's do that. I think a big part of the problem is what Alistair has echoed here, that a lot of people are starting to think that the Dortmund game has sort of broken the team. And I can understand that. I can see where you're coming from in that assessment. But there's been 2 games since the Dortmund tie. And one was a tough away trip up to Dingwall, where you're playing on a very tight surface, where you're playing the team furthest north in the country, and a team who are in the top flight for a reason, yet we still won the game. And the other game is against the team who, up until yesterday, had won every single game they played in the league and were well within their rights to challenge Celtic. So, yeah, you can say that there's an element of Dortmund breaking the team. But I also believe that these are just 2 difficult games and that Celtic sometimes need to struggle. We as a support have become so used to watching Celtic win that I think we've forgotten that Celtic have never won 38 out of 38 league games. Celtic haven't scored 4+ goals in every single league game in a season ever. And they never will because it's just impossible. So the Dortmund game is right to bring up some insecurities, and it is right to bring up the questioning of some players' performances and maybe the general team performance. But let's not forget we won in Dingwall. And let's not forget that yesterday we probably should have won and just didn't. Still embarrassing that we were 2-0 up and didn't win the game. But it's not the catastrophic collapse that I think some people are making out to be. Which I think, ties into what the 2 comments here from Pegleg Lonergan, what a name by the way, and John has said, sometimes you need the wake-up call. You can't win every game, it's not a big deal. And obviously Pegleg here saying that we're not going to win every game domestically. It was a sluggish second half. International breaks are obviously on either side. As he said, I think what I'm more concerned about is how we come out of the game on Wednesday, and that's what's going to be most irritating, because I know that people will come back to this video on Wednesday should Atalanta destroy us, and there's a very good chance they could. They're a good side, they won the Europa League last season. Celtic aren't great away from home in Europe. There's every chance Atalanta could win 4-5-6-0 on Wednesday, and we've got to stop that from happening. But what I'm trying to do in this video is talk about our domestic performances, and I think that there's the overreaction is just kind of blowing up a little bit. Wednesday, yes, I'm concerned for that, not going to lie, but it's a totally different topic altogether. This is one of the big talking points that I want to bring up from yesterday, and this ties into something that we've been talking about on the podcast for a number of years now. So, John, first of all, saying that Engels, not for the first time this season, was anonymous. We have a comment a little bit further down saying McCowan has done more than both Engels and McGregor in his last 4 matches. There was a lot of comments. I feel like I wish that I could pick them up scrolling, but there was a lot of comments about Engels' performance yesterday. A lot of people getting carried away saying he was a waste of £11 million, that he's terrible, he's a fraud. There was a few of those comments if you scroll through here yesterday, and you'll probably find them, and that irritates me. It irritates me quite a bit, because Arne Engels in his first couple of games as a Celtic player proved that he was a good player. He had the same people now saying that he's a fraud, saying that he was worth all the money. Some people were going as far as to already comparing him with Matt O'Reilly. And at the time I said, calm down. Stop it. He's played 2 games. Don't compare him with Matt O'Reilly. And I'm going to flip the fence now and be on the other side and say, stop saying that he's a fraud and not worth £11 million. What irritates me is, us as a Celtic support cry at the board, moan at the board, and lambast them every single year that they don't spend money on players. Why do we not spend more than £3 million on a player? We sign Engels for 11, we should be doing that more often, people say. People cry out for these £11 million players. Do you know why we don't spend £11 million on players? Because us as a support get on their fucking backs and cry and moan and lambast them when they've had 2 or 3 bad games. As if they can't have a couple of bad games. And do you know what the worst part is? I don't even think Engels was that bad yesterday. I think he was actually quite good in the first half. Second half, the whole team dropped off. It wasn't just Arnold Engels. But I thought he was actually quite good at the first half. A lot of what we'd done was coming through him. 100%, and I'm not going to take that back or be proven otherwise, because I think he was trying really, really hard. I think that he sent a couple of good balls into the box. I think he had a couple of chances where he was unlucky as well. He was positive in the first half. A lot of what we were doing was coming through him. I said that in my match reaction video. Why we don't spend £11 million is because we're greeting-faced bastards when players play poorly. And we said this in the podcast for years. See, when a £3 or £4 million player plays bad for a couple of games, it would put the board off spending £11 million completely. And this isn't me backing up the board. Of course it's not. But I can fully understand why they don't spend the money, because we're greeting-face wanes when a player plays poorly. Player can't have a bad game. So no wonder we don't spend £10 million on players every year, because we wouldn't be winning. You know, we can't win either way. You either don't spend the money and moan, or spend the money and moan. We're the most fickle set of supporters in the world, and it gets on my tits. Give the lad a chance. He had a poor game in Dortmund. The whole team had a poor game in Dortmund. He had a poor game up in Dingwall. The whole team had a poor game up in Dingwall. Yesterday, I don't even think he was that bad. People looking for the moaning points, looking for the bits to get on top of. Second 45 wasn't great, but it by any means didn't show that he was a fraud on my watch. Very irritating. I mean, this is what I mean. Right here, Trusty, Valley, Engels, very, very poor signings so far, especially Engels for £11 million. How? I think he's got something like 2 goals, 3 assists in his first 4 games as a Celtic player. Nuts to me. Absolutely nuts. And this is a sort of general sentiment I feel like coming out of yesterday's game, and I actually went to reply myself to this comment because it really annoyed me, and it shows that... And you know what? This is the thing. I'll say this very loudly. I did not hear any of this coming out of Celtic Park yesterday. None of it. Everybody was walking out of the stadium, you know, is what it is. And obviously people will be annoyed. They will be. But not to the extent as what some people are displaying online. I feel like it's a very vocal majority online that we see this in, and not actually if you were to go into a pub or at the game. But Celtic 67, not seen much change. It is 20 million plus players yet. Not much change in the team. You've not seen... What team have you been watching? What team have you been watching? How have you not seen much change? We're 8 games into a league season, dropping 2 points out of 25. We won 5-1 in a Champions League game for the first time in a club's history. We broke a record that lasted 118 years for clean sheets and not conceding to start off a league campaign. Arguably one of the best starts to a league campaign I have seen in my lifetime. Yet after a couple of games where we haven't been at optimum performances, it's apparently not much of a change. This time last year, people were genuinely questioning whether or not Brendan Rodgers should be manager of Celtic Football Club. People were genuinely wondering, should he be sacked? A couple of games ago, we were talking about the night and day between these two Celtic sides. In the space of a couple of games, all of that changes because we aren't at full optimum speed of performance. Baffling to me if you cannot notice much of a change in this Celtic side. It has been night and day. And I cannot exaggerate that enough. And the thing that cheers me up a bit is the fact I do scroll through and I do see a lot of people talking about how it's just our fans being fickle, that it's just a little bit of negativity for the sake of negativity. There is a lot of people, and as I said, I feel like the majority of people are on the same side as me. It is only a few people who are being so negative. But, you know, it's... Team starts to perform like a broken pub team. How are we a broken pub team? We're top of the league. We've not lost a fucking game. And we're in the semi-final of the League Cup. We won 5-1 in the Champions League. I genuinely don't know what else this team can do. We need to eliminate the European pumpings. I get that. But fucking hell. You come back to me when you can point out a time in existence when Celtic won 38 out of 38. Do it. It's just not going to happen. You point out when any team's done it. Nobody has. Arsenal went invincible. They didn't win every game. Celtic went invincible. They didn't win every game. Rangers went invincible. They didn't win every game. It's impossible. It's utterly impossible. Celtic missing the intensity we had under Ange. How? We scored like 20 odd goals in 8 games. What intensity is missing at the minute? It irritates me. I can't reiterate the point enough, is I'm not saying that Celtic are excused from criticism. And I think a lot of people will look at this video and think that's what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. It's absolutely not what I'm saying. When the team plays badly, or we have a poor 45, or we do something wrong, we should be allowed to call it out. But you can do it in the correct fashion. You can do it while keeping things relative to the extent they should be spoke about, not by blowing it completely out of proportion and making up narratives that simply aren't true. Celtic have been very impressive this season and deserve their credit for that, but they also deserve to be called out in the little things that they've done wrong. You're allowed to be discouraged by the performance in Europe against Dortmund. Of course you are. But at the same time, you know, it's a game that you've got to move past, you've got to look on from. You can't always just call back to it. And I guarantee come March time, all of this will just be forgotten. That's what will happen. You know, after a draw against the team who are second in the league, you know, we start going, you know, time to stop pretending we've got a great squad, by the way. Number one, I don't think anybody has really went to the full extent of saying it's a great squad, it's a better squad, it's an improved squad. There's obviously places that we could improve in. You go back to my video that I made at the end of the transfer window when I reviewed the squad depth. I said we're heading in the right direction. There's still things to do. For God's sake, we still had Luis Palma as our backup left wing. I said that, you know, attacking wise, I wish we had a couple of better options, but we're in a better place. We've improved. We've done what we could for this transfer window. I was happy with it. Yakimakis, we're still talking about him. Once again, Adamida, apparently rotten, can't kick a ball. That seems to be the narratives that some like to run with. Haksabanovic involved in this, for crying out. Haksabanovic, what a player he was. Thanks, Rab, for saying that, by the way. What a player. We all know how much I loved Haksabanovic, but I'm not going to sit here and rewrite history and pretend that he was a great option for Celtic. He wasn't. He was pish. Simple as that. I loved him. There's a reason he's back in Sweden. There's a reason he barely kicked a ball at Stoke City. You know? Turnbull. It's Turnbull. Turnbull. Sorry, what? Turnbull. He's at Cardiff. Struggling with Cardiff, in fact. Yeah, as I've said, it's not a great squad by any means, but it doesn't mean that we just start making up narratives and throwing. You know, we're talking about Abada being on the bench. Abada was starting for Celtic a lot of the time. Abada wasn't necessarily a bench option. He was, the first season Andrew was here, he was our starting right winger, for goodness sake. It doesn't mean I disagree with the general point at the end here. We do need better. We do need other players in this squad. But to start barking up the Moritz Jens tree and the Yakimakis tree again, it's Celtic fans. Get over it. Players come and go. And sometimes you can't just get a like-for-like replacement in areas. Sometimes people take a little bit of time to get into it. But my general point, and the final thing I'm going to say is, the result yesterday does not call for this overreaction. Absolutely not. And I mean this here, like, Scales getting stick. And people know how much of a Scales critic I have been. The guy's not put a foot wrong this season, and he's coming under fire for yesterday. It was one mistake, and apart from that, he didn't put a foot wrong. Overreactions. To finish up on what I'm saying is, today's result in the Rangers game doesn't mean that everything's okay. Doesn't mean we just stop talking about the things that we done wrong yesterday. The mini collapse that we had in that second half is obviously something that the manager and the team need to go over and ensure doesn't happen again. But it doesn't mean we start saying that this is a broken pub team or a side that's really fucking done, or we don't have good squads. It's nonsense. It's an overreaction, and I will die on that hill. And do you know why I'll die on that hill? Because at the end of the season, nobody will be saying it. And I want this team to do something better than just achieve the bare minimum, which is obviously winning the league title, maybe winning a double or treble. I want us to compete. I want us to avoid these European hidings, and Wednesday could be I could be coming on here on Wednesday saying we are shite. You know what I mean? But I try my best to be a non-reactionary fan. I try my best to look at things as they come and try and weigh up what actually is the context of a result. And yesterday was us dropping points to a team who took 2 chances when we could have scored far more than what we did. It wasn't as big a deal as what some are making out. Right, that's that for today. Absurd, as I said, absurd. Calm down. But for the ones who are on the same side as me, thanks. Cheers, I appreciate it. Anyway, like and subscribe. I'll see you all next time.